Hello, it's Dr. Cindy with this week's mental health moment. Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." And it is true that we all do take on and play out various roles throughout the course of our lives, and who we show ourselves to be to the outside world is not the entirety of who we are. As we are growing up, we get frequent and often immediate feedback from others, not only about our own behaviors, but also more generally what is considered to be acceptable and unacceptable in society overall. Over time, that influences how we present ourselves to other people and what we allow and don't allow ourselves to express. We adapt to those social cues and form conclusions about what earns us approval and acceptance and love from parents and others, as well as what causes disapproval or displeasure or rejection. In the process, we learn to act in ways that will hopefully yield more positive and fewer negative reactions. These patterns become ingrained in the course of our identity development and form what Carl Jung called the persona, which is a social mask that hides the impulses, urges, and emotions that we consider unacceptable. Although this is typically not a fully conscious process, people who have experienced particularly harsh or hostile feedback often have some awareness of how that shaped the way they would act around others after that. Many people of color have shared their experiences with having to code switch as a coping strategy for managing being in predominantly white environments. It doesn't take too many instances of being judged, criticized, and mistreated for how you speak, act, or look before you try to alter how you present yourself as a means of emotional self-preservation and even physical self-protection and survival. Many LGBTQ individuals have experiences of rejection or retribution for behaving in ways that violate expected gender norms. So, from a young age, they develop a sense of shame and secrecy around those aspects of themselves, which then makes it very challenging for them to come to terms with who they are. So, what happens to all of the urges, emotions, and impulses that we learn to hide when we are growing up? Those that we have conscious awareness of may be divulged to a trusted few. They would be the people whom we feel we can tell anything to without fear of judgment and that we can really be ourselves with. Other characteristics that we've learned to conceal may be kept completely to ourselves as secrets that we are afraid or ashamed to reveal to anyone else. And some may have seemed so wrong or bad or shameful in our early experiences that they've become hidden even from us. Jung called this latter collection of thoughts and feelings the shadow. It is the dark side of our personality, consisting of whatever emotions and impulses we've repressed. These often include rage, envy, greed, selfishness, prejudice, aggression, desire, and striving for power. Whatever we learn to deny in ourselves due to perceiving them as inferior, evil, or unacceptable become part of our personal shadow. Every single one of those impulses I just described are normal and natural aspects of being human. But since we are taught that they're bad and we want to both see ourselves and be seen by others as good, we reject all of those feelings as not being okay. And the more we want to think of and portray ourselves in a favorable light, the more we will defend against any thoughts, impulses, and emotions that contradict that. So, for example, someone who prides themselves on being helpful and generous will reject feelings that seem selfish or self-indulgent. A person who portrays themselves as strong and self-sufficient will reject anything that hints at being vulnerable, needy, or weak. So anything that is not consistent with our conscious attitude about ourselves becomes part of our hidden shadow. Because all of the feelings that we have, both conscious and unconscious, are a natural part of being human, having ones that we have rejected and repressed keeps us from being fully aware of ourselves and our experiences. We are afraid deep down that those aspects of ourselves are who we really are and have developed masks and cloaking devices to try to keep others from discovering those dark secrets. That's the persona, the way we portray ourselves and interact with others. Fear is that if people knew those things about us, they wouldn't like us. But the greater risk is that we can't fully like and appreciate ourselves as long as we are harboring feelings we have disowned as being unacceptable. Rejecting any aspect of ourselves prevents us from being whole and complete. And the unacceptable aspects of our personality that are hidden in the shadow don't disappear. They operate behind the scenes, influencing us in ways that we often aren't aware of. So the irony is that the unconscious parts of us that we so desperately wanted to deny because we didn't think it was okay to be that way have far more power to influence us when we pretend that they don't exist than if we were to recognize and accept them. Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's because we tend to project onto other people those shadow aspects that we don't want to face. We condemn in others the very things we can't stand in ourselves. It makes us feel that we are good by not acknowledging and admitting to the things that we think are bad. And it makes us feel even better about ourselves when we see those undesirable traits in someone else. And often, the stronger the emotional reaction we have to another person, the more intensely we are rejecting and defending against that same characteristic in ourselves. So, the person who prides themselves on being generous and helpful will really find fault with people who they perceive to be selfish and self focused. And the person who is compelled to prove how strong and independent they are will be repulsed by anyone who presents as being weak in some way. So while all of the world may be a stage, it is also very much a mirror, reflecting back to us what we don't want to admit to or accept about ourselves. This is true for each of us individually and also for all of us collectively. The events of 2020 have brought to light these dynamics in very dramatic ways. First of all, note that we have all literally been wearing masks for a year. What a visible representation of the fact that we go through life concealing who we are from other people. And look at the many shadow aspects of humanity that have always been present, but are now so clearly and overtly being revealed to us in ways that we can no longer ignore. Aggression, prejudice, greed, hypocrisy, judgment, and a desire for domination, power, and control over others. We're also seeing our psychological defenses being played out before our eyes, including blaming and criticizing other people for their behavior and dismissing or denying other people's experiences, rather than looking inward and asking ourselves what we can do to make things better and create more of what we want to see. And while it might feel overwhelming, disheartening, and even discouraging to be confronted with everything that we might rather not know about or see, be it in the political realm, the social realm, or the personal one, it is only by having this all come to light that we can hopefully face these shadow energies so they no longer have the power that they have had over us up to this point. Whatever we learned to repress has great power over us because it represents unmet emotional hurts that we can't even attend to because we don't know they're there. So we find ourselves in challenging situations over and over again and ask, why does this keep happening to me? Rather than interpreting it as some cruel twist of fate, it is important to recognize the ways in which we are creating these experiences. And this doesn't mean that anything you observe outside of you is just all in your head. Whether it's a political figure or party, a group of people in society, or others in your own personal life, sometimes people really do behave poorly and act in ways that are harmful and hurtful. But being upset with others keeps us caught up in judgment and blame and distracts us from discovering the deeper significance of our reaction for our own personal growth and hopefully for resolution. I told a story in last week's mental health moment about becoming increasingly bothered by the trash I would find along my running route every morning. And my initial reflex was to blame and judge and criticize the litterers, but that only made me more upset about the situation while doing nothing to resolve it. As I've mentioned before, every encounter or experience we have brings the opportunity to reveal and therefore to heal old wounds and emotional vulnerabilities. And our shadow energies are part of that important healing work because as long as there are aspects of us that we view as unacceptable, we will struggle to accept and truly feel good about ourselves. And being scared of our own shadow means we are, in essence, afraid of ourselves, which makes us our own worst enemy. So, how might we start to explore and come to terms with our shadow energies? A great starting point is to really pay attention to the things and other people that you find yourself becoming most upset and bothered by. And notice impulses to accuse, attack, judge, criticize, shame, blame, or punish others for their behavior. Those are all clues that what you are seeing or experiencing on the outside resonates in some way with something that is challenging for you on the inside. A simple mantra I came up for remembering this is, for every single thing I see, what does that reflect in me? Initially, this can be very tricky and challenging work. It is so tempting to make it about the other person, and our ego is highly motivated to keep us focused outside of ourselves as a way to protect and preserve our self-image. Even as we ask ourselves what is happening internally to cause such a strong negative reaction, our brain is going to come in with all kinds of reasons and explanations to justify how we are perceiving the other person. Pay attention to the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. Those are clues that your ego is focusing you on trying to change the reflection in the mirror instead of looking at what is being reflected. I'm going to talk about 3 C's: curiosity, compassion, and connection, that can help you as you work to explore and process your personal shadow. The first one, curiosity, means taking an interest in the reaction you are having as an observer rather than a participant. So you're not allowing the emotional experience to take over and carry you away. Say to yourself, oh, I wonder what this is about, and spend some time gently examining the reaction you are having. It can be helpful to write out the information that comes to you. Keep it focused on you. So instead of writing, he said this, or she did that, or they shouldn't, write down, I'm thinking, I'm feeling. This enables you to take ownership of your emotional reactions so you can hopefully start to understand it better. As an example, let's say you just got off the phone with a friend and you're feeling frustrated and angry that they spent the whole time talking about themselves. The reflexive dialogue would sound something like, I can't believe her. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. She never asks me how I'm doing and always expects me to be there for her. She can talk my ear off for a whole hour and not even ask a single thing about me. Now, the reflecting that I'm encouraging you to do instead would go something like, ooh, that's interesting. I'm feeling really angry and frustrated. What's this about? I'm thinking that was a very one-sided conversation, and I'm blaming my friend for that. I'm feeling like she should have asked me about me, and I'm seeing her as being very selfish. Ooh, wait, selfishness. What is it about that bothers me so much? Again, be prepared for your ego to be looking for opportunities to ambush you and try to hijack the process. Your ego thinks it needs to protect you from these unsavory aspects of yourself. So when it hears the word selfish, it might jump in with, well, it's not okay to be selfish. People who are selfish are greedy and narcissistic and self-centered. As soon as the narrative becomes critical and judgmental, that's your clue that the ego has gotten involved. Take some deep breaths, connect to your heart to quiet your mind, and try to recenter yourself and get back to curiosity. You might ask, what are my experiences of feeling selfish? See what comes to you. You will likely remember times in the past when you saw yourself that way or were scolded for being selfish by other people. You might feel guilty and ashamed about those experiences. Or you might recall times when you were praised for being generous with others, like giving your little sister the last cookie, or letting someone go ahead of you in line. Those times made you feel good about yourself, and you got it in your head that you always needed to be that way. Except sometimes you wanted that last cookie or wanted to be the first in line, and it didn't feel good to feel that way because those weren't the behaviors that people liked about you. Second C is compassion. As these memories, feelings, and experiences come to the surface, can you meet that younger version of you with compassion instead of criticism? Oh, of course you wanted that cookie. Cookies are delicious. Those ones were fresh out of the oven. Mom just baked those. They were still soft and warm, and the chocolate was still gooey. It's okay that you wanted to have that for yourself. You are allowed to want things, and you don't have to always feel like sharing. When you can extend empathy and understanding around those basic human urges, you can start to soften your view of them and of yourself as being bad, and maybe even start to consider there are some positive and helpful aspects of those thoughts and feelings as well. Every single feeling we have has some adaptive value, and extremes in either direction are neither healthy nor adaptive. Think about how it would be if you were truly selfless 100% of the time. There really is such a thing as being generous to a fault or being too nice. And maybe the decisions in the past that you have seen as selfish were actually times when you took a stand and said, wait, I matter too. The third C is connection. When you've been able to look at challenging experiences and emotions with curiosity and have compassion for yourself around how you felt, are there ways to reconnect and welcome those shadow energies into the whole of who you are? What are some ways that you can allow and accept those thoughts and feelings as just more information about what matters to you? Can you admit that sometimes you are selfish and that that's okay? Whether it's ordering your own dessert and not sharing it with the rest of the table, or deciding to have your child stay at daycare an hour longer so you can work out at the gym, or saying no to helping a friend move because you just really don't feel up to it. You get to make decisions based on your own needs without that making you a bad person. And you may find that by allowing yourself to do this, you end up feeling even more able to give of yourself freely and without resentment at other times because you have created better balance between how you take care of your own needs and showing up for others. And you also will be less likely to judge or feel resentful of others when they act in ways to take care of themselves, which is what you used to see as being selfish. Many decades ago, there was a radio show called The Shadow, and the opening line was, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows." Our own shadow truly does know what lurks in our minds, and the fear of it being evil is what causes us to resist going there. But the only way to overcome a fear that there's a monster in the closet is to open the door and see that there's nothing there. When we do the work to face and integrate what we have hidden away in our own mental closet, there's a great deal of relief in discovering not only that there are no monsters in there, that we ourselves are not monsters either. Take care. Have a good week.